As members of this community, we feel it's important you know what's going on with the Department of Justice investigation. So over the next few minutes, we'll share what we know, what we've done to modernize and improve, and how we plan to keep improving in the months and years to come. My name is Ryan Cody. I'm a Senior Public Information Officer with the Phoenix Police Department's Continuous Improvement Unit. What you're about to watch is a virtual version of the same presentation we'll be giving in person to various community groups. Just like those in-person presentations, this video will include insight from a member of the Phoenix Police Department's executive staff, in this case, Assistant Chief Brian Chapman, and a member of the City of Phoenix Law Department, Chief Assistant City Attorney TJ Martin.
The purpose of this presentation is an opportunity for members of the community to hear directly from those of us who are responsible for responding to the requests from the DOJ so that we can answer your questions and you have an opportunity to hear exactly what's been transpiring over the past 2.5 years.
First, we'll tell you what a pattern or practice investigation is. We'll tell you what the DOJ outlined as the 5 areas of focus for this investigation, a summary of the investigation so far, when we expect it to end, our continuous improvement efforts, and what we expect will be the next steps. So first, what is a pattern or practice investigation? Well, after the attack on Rodney King, Congress passed the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, which gives the U.S. Attorney General authority to conduct pattern or practice investigations into law enforcement agencies. The idea here is to identify patterns of misconduct, systemic deficiencies, and to ensure constitutional policing through reform agreements. When announcing this investigation in August of 2021, the Department of Justice mentioned 5 specific areas it would be focusing on. The first is to assess the use of excessive force in violation of the Fourth Amendment. The second is whether Phoenix PD engages in discriminatory policing that violates constitutional and federal law. Number 3 is whether Phoenix PD engages in retaliation against those participating in their First Amendment protected activities. The fourth area is assessing the city's systems and practices for responding to those with mental and behavioral health disabilities. And number 5 is determining if the city of Phoenix violates the rights of individuals experiencing homelessness by unlawfully seizing or disposing their property. An important note, Phoenix is the first city to be investigated by the DOJ in this area. It's also worth noting, based on our research of other investigations, the DOJ has routinely come up with findings and recommendations in areas not specifically outlined at the start, so it is possible investigators are looking into other areas as well. Okay, so now that you know what's being investigated, let's talk about what has happened thus far. In August 2023, 2 years after the investigation began, Interim Chief Michael Sullivan and the Phoenix Police Department's Continuous Improvement Unit released this update video.
The Department of Justice has been here 7 times over the last 2 years, the most recent being this past spring, and those meetings have been productive.
Interim Police Chief Michael Sullivan came to Phoenix PD in September of 2022, a little more than a year after the DOJ launched its investigation and right in the middle of a dispute on how to share evidence the DOJ was requesting.
DOJ requested a lot of sensitive information, and we want them to have what they need, but it has to be done in a secure way.
The FBI has rules for sharing sensitive law enforcement information. These rules protect things like fingerprints and other personal details from ending up in the wrong hands, and the City of Phoenix must follow these rules to avoid serious penalties, even if sharing information with the federal government.
The DOJ initially declined a number of the solutions that we proposed, which slowed down the information sharing for a number of months. But I'm proud of our staff for working through these matters and providing a solution that worked for both sides.
Since resolving the issue, the City of Phoenix has provided more than 20,000 body-worn camera videos and more than 80,000 requested documents. DOJ investigators have participated in more than 200 hours of ride-alongs with various units. They've attended trainings at the Phoenix Regional Police Academy and interviewed more than 100 city employees, shadowing the job duties of many others.
We need to be a self-assessing, self-correcting agency, and that's not just something that we say. Over our last 2 years, we've rewritten our use of force policy, with not just input from the community, but also from the Department of Justice. We've trained officers on new, less lethal tools that we know have saved lives around our city. And we have mandated several scenario-based training courses to help our officers de-escalate situations.
Trying to keep you and the baby safe, okay? Phoenix PD is a model for crisis intervention training, so much so that other departments come here to learn from our experts. And similarly, Phoenix looks to other industry leaders, including departments who have been through DOJ investigations, on best practices moving forward.
The city is preparing for any possible outcome from this investigation. But this work does not change our mission to serve the residents, visitors, and businesses of Phoenix. Transparency is the key to maintaining trust. We are and always will look for ways to improve.
Since that 2-year update video, the City of Phoenix has continued producing documents and body-worn camera videos as requested by the DOJ. And as of late December 2023, those requests were still coming in. A question many people have is, how much has this cost the city so far? Well, by the end of fiscal year 2022-2023, so in July, the city had spent roughly $5.1 million to facilitate and cooperate with the investigation. So when will the investigation end? Well, it's a question the City of Phoenix has asked DOJ on several occasions, and each time, investigators declined to provide an estimate. However, representatives from the DOJ came to Phoenix in November 2023 for in-person interviews with City Manager Jeff Barton and Interim Chief Sullivan. That's something that cities who have been through this process before tell us was a final step in their investigation. Regardless of the timing, the City of Phoenix is already prioritizing change. And many of these reforms were put into place before the DOJ announced its investigation. Here are just a few. In 2015, the city manager's office launched the Community and Police Trust Initiative. This created dialogue between the police department and the community it serves. Also in 2015, Phoenix PD launched dedicated crisis intervention teams of officers specifically trained to respond exclusively to calls involving mental and behavioral health. In 2016, the Department of Justice and then U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch traveled to the Phoenix Regional Police Academy and praised Phoenix PD for leading the way in law enforcement innovation. Body-worn cameras were initially deployed in 2013, and by 2019, every officer in the city of Phoenix was outfitted with body-worn camera technology. And in 2020, the Phoenix City Council approved the formation of the Office of Accountability and Transparency, which is a civilian-run office designed to review police misconduct and facilitate communication with the community about police issues. In June of 2020, Phoenix PD committed to becoming compliant with a national change movement called 8 Can't Wait. Created by Campaign Zero in the wake of George Floyd's death, 8 Can't Wait called for law enforcement agencies to be compliant in 8 areas of industry improvement, which you see right here on screen. Less than a year later, in February 2021, the Phoenix Police Department was deemed fully compliant with 8 Can't Wait. And as for the specific areas of focus of the DOJ investigation, let's start with use of force. In 2021, PD rolled out its less than lethal pilot program in 2 precincts, training officers on multiple less than lethal tools such as the 40mm launcher and pepper ball systems. These tools give officers a safer option than traditional firearms when attempting to de-escalate dangerous encounters. And after much community input, the program was expanded citywide in 2022. PD was chosen to participate in the National Public Safety Partnership, which opens a line of communication with other agencies across the nation to share ideas and best practices. Then, 2 very important core principles were added to the use of force policy in 2022. The first, duty to intervene. The second is duty to provide medical assistance. And furthermore, training in integrating communications, assessment, and tactics, or ICAT, began department-wide.
And this is very specific to dealing with people who are A, armed with things other than a handgun, and B, focuses on time, distance, and cover to have successful outcomes in volatile incidents.
There have been several initiatives aimed at preventing discriminatory policing practices, starting with mandatory implicit bias training in 2016, the before-mentioned duty to intervene policy in 2022, and requiring all PD employees to complete active bystandership and law enforcement or ABLE training,
which is a national evidence-based program on intervention strategies for people witnessing misconduct or people doing things contrary to policy.
As far as ensuring a constitutional response to First Amendment protected activities, in the summer of 2020, the police department utilized social media to educate the public on what constitutes an unlawful assembly. Then, later created the Civil Disturbance Unit based on a similar unit in the Washington, D.C. Police Department. PD also changed policy on handling large gatherings. Announcements were changed to include repeated expectations and to clearly identify routes for leaving a gathering if it is deemed an unlawful assembly. Furthermore, arrest protocol was updated during these events. The protocol includes increased accountability for officers and an emphasis on citing and releasing arrestees in lieu of booking them into jail. Addressing calls involving mental and behavioral health has been a priority for the city of Phoenix for more than a decade now. The first crisis intervention teams were created in 2015, and in 2019, all 911 call staff was trained in crisis intervention and mental health assistance. Furthermore, city 911 call centers began staffing a mental health clinician to advise with call diversion. And the training for this program is led by CIT International Board member and Phoenix Police Detective Sabrina Taylor.
We would like to divert people from the 911 system, like from that criminal justice framework, back into a behavioral health framework as soon as it's safe.
And we've been able to do just that. Each year since 2019, more and more calls are diverted to our community partners at Solari Crisis and Human Services. Those calls would have previously been handled by a uniformed officer, and we know this is a shift the community has been asking for. In 2021, the City Council approved a $15 million investment into the Community Assistance Program. Now responding citywide, the program sends teams of licensed caseworkers to scenes when safe, providing specific expertise and allowing firefighters and officers to respond to other calls. As for the city's response to people experiencing homelessness, the Office of Homeless Solutions was created in 2022, which is a dedicated team providing support and solutions for the unsheltered community. And OHS only calls police to intervene if there is criminal activity. OHS also implemented new protocol for identifying and storing unattended property. This gives owners a 2-day notice to remove their belongings before the property is stored for 45 days at a city facility. You can read more on this and other initiatives at phoenix.gov/solutions. So again, the DOJ has not indicated exactly when the investigation will end, but when it does, there are two potential outcomes. The first is that there was not sufficient evidence of a pattern or practice of violations, and the DOJ may issue a technical assistance letter in lieu of a findings report. This has happened roughly 20 times in the last several decades, but not since 2012. The second outcome would be that the DOJ does believe there's enough evidence of a pattern or practice of constitutional violations and will notify the city of such no more than a few days before issuing a findings report. It's at this time the DOJ has historically asked other cities to sign what is called an Agreement in Principle, or AIP, which is a document that binds a city to negotiate in good faith toward a consent decree. And here's where this can become understandably confusing. The DOJ asks cities to sign this agreement in principle without first reading the findings of their investigation. And while signing the AIP is not the same thing as signing a consent decree, it is the first step, and it's a direct path to federal oversight. On the other hand, declining to sign an AIP does not mean a consent decree is off the table. It simply allows city leaders the opportunity to review the DOJ's findings before deciding on how to proceed. Once the city has an opportunity to review and understand the findings, there are several possible scenarios. The following are 3 of those possibilities. Scenario 1. The City of Phoenix and DOJ begin negotiations of a consent decree. This is a court-ordered mandate on reforms overseen by an independent monitor, the court itself, and the DOJ. Another possible scenario is that the City of Phoenix and DOJ negotiate some other type of reform agreement. This may or may not include a court or independent monitor. Or a third option, The two parties cannot agree on how to implement reforms, and the DOJ can take the city to court. In this case, the DOJ would hold all burden of proof, needing to produce evidence which proves a pattern or practice of unconstitutional policing or other federal violations. Each of these potential outcomes brings with it a wide array of consequences that could shape the way policing happens in Phoenix for years to come. Whatever happens, Phoenix PD is committed to being a self-assessing and self-correcting organization moving forward. If you'd like to learn more about the evolution of reform in Phoenix, or take a look at some of the research we've done on other investigations and the impact they've had on cities across America, visit phoenix.gov/DOJ. Thank you for your time, and please be safe.